I was taken aback when I met my niece's future wife at the pre-wedding meeting. Why was I surprised? There's a good reason for it all. I'm going to confess a story here that I couldn't even tell my beloved wife. I am the second son among 4 siblings. First is my sister, then my elder brother, and I have a younger sister, 2 sons, 2 daughters. The most ideal combination, as people say. I work as a researcher in a pretty stable corporate in South Korea, one of the leading conglomerates. The early years of my career were quite tough. Additionally, frequent business trips abroad put a lot of strain on my wife. I felt guilty for not being able to be with my children during their growing years. But as a result of these hardships, I was able to earn a high salary and enjoy benefits. When our children became college students, the company paid their tuition, and we used the company-run water park at a very reasonable price. I also participated in volunteer activities hosted by the company with my children this year. After enduring those tough times, to provide for my gentle wife and adorable kids, I became an executive. I am not much of a drinker. However, one of my department heads loves drinking, and as I drank with him, my tolerance gradually increased. I started spending more time and money on drinking, which caused some friction with my wife. She warned me that relieving stress with alcohol was not good, but she still cared about my health despite all the drinking. It wasn't just the drinking, you see. Do you think men come straight home after drinking? Sometimes we went for more drinks, played pool, and got home at dawn. I relieved some stress by drinking with colleagues and friends and rewarded my wife, who had been raising our kids. On weekends, I took care of the kids at home, and she could meet her friends, whom she hadn't seen for a while. After the children grew up, I also let her go on overnight trips. Through these brief moments of freedom, she could recharge, and I can proudly say that our relationship as a couple was really strong. My elder brother, just above me, cares about me a lot. Among us 4 siblings, we have a very strong bond. But my brother takes especially good care of me, even though he's the same gender. There's often competition among male siblings, but my brother was different. He worked as a journalist at a newspaper company, retired at the regular age, and stayed at home. He told me that his only son is getting married soon. He also said that he'd like me to attend the pre-wedding meeting. I asked if it wouldn't be burdensome if the younger uncle attended such a meeting, but he said that the bride's side also invited her younger uncle and his wife. My nephew had already introduced his girlfriend to my brother's family, and she visited frequently. Upon my brother's invitation, I was very curious about who would become my future niece-in-law. My wife and I entered the pre-wedding meeting venue, and when I saw the face of my future niece-in-law, who had arrived earlier and was sitting down, I became lost in thought. But when our eyes met, my future niece-in-law greeted me without any discomfort. In fact, I was acquainted with my Suntob niece-in-law. I used to visit a hostess club once a year, and I had met her there. She wasn't employed at the club, but worked as a part-time job filling in when they were short-staffed. To be honest, I shouldn't have, but I had spent some private time with her. And now, she was going to marry my nephew. Speaking of my nephew, he's a successful entrepreneur, a graduate of a prestigious university, and the founder of a venture company. Seeing my future niece-in-law, I was so tense that I couldn't speak properly, but she greeted me politely as if meeting me for the first time. Maintaining a poker face, I was relieved, as it would have been more awkward if she had recognized me. and been unable to speak or had looked tense. According to my wife, my niece-in-law comes from a good family, is pretty polite, smart, and has saved a lot of money. I had heard her bragging about not expecting such a wonderful daughter-in-law. I was extremely curious about who my nephew was marrying, especially since my sister-in-law couldn't stop praising her. But when I found out she was the woman I had met at the bar, I couldn't help but be shocked. However, revealing that I knew about her past could ruin my nephew's marriage, so I calmed down and ate. In fact, my underwear was soaked with sweat. Every time my niece-in-law looked at me and smiled, I got goosebumps and was tense about what she might say. That day, my wife was satisfied with the hotel meal, but I couldn't eat half of it. I was wiping the sweat pouring from the tension, regretting my past actions, and thinking about how small the world is. We managed to get through the pre-wedding meeting in a good atmosphere that day. My niece-in-law remained unflustered till the end. I couldn't help but be appalled by her audacity and despicable behavior, but on second thought, she would have also been nervous, as she was meeting her future husband and both sets of parents. At the pre-wedding meeting, my daughter-in-law's young uncle said that her parents were in a quite good financial situation. They said they would buy a fairly large apartment in the city, and the property would be jointly named after the groom and bride. My brother was also fairly well off, but compared to the bride's parents, it seemed like a drop in the bucket. My brother happily offered me wine, but I couldn't drink it comfortably. My brother said, "You usually enjoy drinking. Why are you being so formal today? Let's have a good drink." But I politely declined, saying, "I can't do anything because I'm nervous about my nephew getting married. When would that meeting end?" It felt like 2 hours had turned into 20 years. After the tense time passed, I went home and stood blankly for a while. My wife scolded me for sitting like a lost soul without taking a quick shower, but I didn't have the energy to respond. Then my brother called and asked, "What do you think of our future daughter-in-law, now that you've actually seen her?" "Well, brother, she seems like the most perfect daughter-in-law I've ever seen." "You're lucky, brother," I replied, catering to my brother's feelings. "If my nephew goes through with this marriage, I'll have to see her at every major family event." I found the idea extremely uncomfortable, especially considering her past working in a bar, which seemed unfitting for my straight-laced nephew. I wanted to talk my nephew out of this marriage quietly and peacefully. While I was having lunch at work the next day, I received a call from her. She asked, "Hello, Uncle, it's me. Don't you think we should have a chat sometime this evening?" I was taken aback by her audacity, but I agreed to meet her at the restaurant she suggested. I don't know how I managed to get through the workday. When the evening came, I met her. As she ordered a course meal and casually suggested ordering a drink, I told her, "I drove here. I'm just going to have a meal." To which she cheekily responded, "Come on, you enjoy drinking. Have a drink with your meal. There are plenty of ways to sober up." Looking at her boldly suggesting drinks, I realized I was no match for her. I had encountered her for the first time 2 years ago at a hostess club, where she had sat down next to me. It was strange to see her working there, as she seemed unfit for such a place. When I suggested she try doing something else since she was good at foreign languages, she said, "This is a job. I have a long-term boyfriend and we've promised to get married." I had no idea that the man she was talking about was my beloved nephew. When I asked if her boyfriend knew about her job, she boldly replied, I told him I tutor in the evenings, so we only meet on weekends. I gave her my phone number at the hostess club, and we had met several times outside. I have a daughter of similar age, and I thought if my daughter was doing such work secretly, it would turn our family upside down. She was a professional in her own way. She was good at entertaining guests with a sense of class, and didn't make excessive demands like other girls. Being young, pretty, and proud, I had no reason to refuse her. I often had late nights, and it wasn't a big deal to make excuses to my wife. I even used the funerals of my friends and colleagues' parents as an excuse. And sometimes I justified my drinking session, saying, someone wanted to have a drink with me, but it wouldn't end with just a drink. We have to visit at least 3 bars. The Suntog niece-in-law suggested a drink, and I decided to worry about the consequences later. Strangely, I was getting tipsy, and she said, please forget my past. I will take what happened between us to my grave. She didn't touch a drop of alcohol, which I later realized was part of her meticulous plan. I fell for her trick and ended up drinking without getting to say what I wanted. As I got drunk, my judgment became blurred and she drove my car. She suggested, see that motel? We didn't meet often, but it was nice, wasn't it? Since we met like this, let's rest a bit. When I asked, are you messing with me, even though you're getting married? She replied, how could I forget a gentleman like you? Come to think of it, you and him have a lot in common. Must be in the genes. And she laughed. I should have stepped back for my nephew's sake. But how many could resist such a beautiful and cunning girl? I decided to follow my instincts. I had a good time with her and decided to end our relationship there. And as a soon-to-be father-in-law, I gave her a piece of advice. I can't tolerate your audacity anymore. Be careful with your actions from now on. I'll be watching. I'm genuinely worried about whether she can live well with my innocent nephew. It's very frustrating that I can't tell my brother the truth about this.